I can. I'd like to call the meeting of the Norfolk Advisory Committee to order, the meeting of March 6th. Got the date and the month right this time, so that's very proud of myself. We have a fairly full agenda tonight. We're going to hear from the town administrator on the warrant. It just closed within the last week, so it'll be a high-level review of this, but I think we can get a sense of the issues that might be problematic as we do this. We have some minutes to approve. I'd like to talk about the schedule based on the presentation and also some information I've gotten from the schools and the planning board. And then we can talk about assigning members to monitor committees as our sort of committee liaison to certain departments. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge we have a new member tonight, Melissa Sear. She's joining us. And welcome, Melissa, and I hope you enjoy yourself here. We try to keep things light but serious. I don't take anything I say seriously, but I do take what other people say seriously. So I'll do a roll call. Brian Beachkowski.
Here.
Ken Fitzgerald.
Here.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Here.
Joyce Terrio.
Here.
Rob Garrity.
Here.
Mike G. Here. And Melissa Sear.
Here.
David Lutz here. With 8 members present and accounted for. So with that, I'll turn it over to Justin, who's brought some materials. The one I think that we're going to start with is the colorful spreadsheet, which is the articles.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. So yes, in front of you, you have the warrant and the articles as they are now. I would just highlight the yellow that you have there are, I would say, placeholders, and they may either stay on the warrant or they may go off. But I'll run through fairly quickly on this. One is annual election. Unpaid bills is number 2. There's no unpaid bills at the moment, but these are sort of our boilerplate or new articles that we have on here. We have a budget transfers article if we require any transfers. The next one would be the approval of collective bargaining agreements. We're currently undergoing negotiations with 2 unions, the clerical and DPW union. I anticipate we should be ready for that. You'll have your compensation schedule for non-union employees, your general budget articles, and then you have capital expenditures. And for our newer members, we generally handle capital in the fall town meeting. So usually in annual town meeting, we don't really have anything there for that generally. And at the moment, we don't have anything proposed yet. Another boilerplate article is reauthorizing the revolving fund spending limits. Our first sort of...
Is there any anticipated change in those?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
First placeholder, the superintendent of Norfolk Public Schools asked that we put potentially a placeholder for schematic design. The school building committee that town meeting authorized at last town meeting has been meeting, and they're undergoing a demographic study. Don't necessarily know that we'll be ready to proceed there, but she did ask for put a placeholder there, so I'll speak with her. I don't have any language on that just yet. General hearing reports from town committees. Then you run into quite a few CPC articles. The first 2 are your annual articles, annual distributions, administrative expenses. Next article is the CPC authorized $250,000 for affordable housing, the Affordable Housing Trust. So they allocated some funds for affordable housing projects within town, or hopefully to be able to purchase a property. Revisiting the Mirror Lake Phase 2 sediment analysis. Caitlin has been integral or been a part of these conversations, unlike our previous time we considered this. So we're thinking that this will proceed a little bit more smoothly this year.
So we're going to want to have her attend the same meeting that Cindy attends.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Right. And then you have 2 articles for Freeman Kennedy projects. One's a restoration of field lighting. The other is irrigation system expansion. I think it's 2 soccer fields.
Do you know which field they're doing the lighting on?
No, not off the top of my head. I have it in my email. I can get it to you as soon as I'm done here. But you will have and for. And then they authorized $112,000 for 3 pickleball courts at the Pond Street Recreation Complex.
Can I stop you right there?
Sure.
Are they removing other courts, do you know, or?
If I remember.
Sorry to put you on the spot like
No,
this,
no, no.
but
It's funny. What was this? 2 weeks ago. I was there.
Ann's going to come to this meeting.
Ann's going to come to this meeting. I don't know. It's. I don't know if it was a tennis courts or one of them that's kind of dilapidated that they're renovating.
It might be the skate park, which seems to be no longer used.
That's what they were discussing.
But the skate park wasn't. Is it that large they could do 3? Yeah, it's one of the
Currently
sites
existing
that's being
sites.
unused right now. You may be
I
right.
am concerned about the takeover of pickleball generally. I'm just sort of putting it out there.
Long conversation at CPC about this article. I'm sure you'll enjoy your conversation with Ann. And then we have an article that we're still trying to work on an actual figure for, and these are for the next 2. Looking at Town Hill, the engineering design do the gazebo, do ADA, do electrical and irrigation. CPC's meeting next Thursday, and I know this is one of the articles they're considering, and also potentially the Campbell Forest project. This is something that Conservation Committee is trying to pursue, trying to level the trails, make it ADA compliant and so forth. So those are placeholders. I don't know if they'll be on or not on this warrant. We're trying to make it work. Number 23, we'll talk quite a bit about this one. We're revisiting the special act, and so this would be familiar for the committee. I think it was, 2 years ago that we pursued a special act to turn town center into a wastewater district. So I think one of the issues that emerged with doing that is that there were pre-existing agreements in place, which had supposedly some allocations from different developments. We had an issue with receiving funds, so the town pursued implementing a wastewater district, but one of the maybe considerations that wasn't really fully thought out at that moment was that, in our understanding, it would eliminate those agreements, and so those who had reserve capacity on the sewer system here would not then have to pay. And they were, in some cases, they were paying before. So we're proposing, and I'm going to have town council in here too when we talk about this, and Blair, we're proposing revisiting the wastewater act and inserting specific language, which I have, which essentially says allows the select board, the sewer commission, to assess and collect annual charges to all customers with reserve capacity for the Norfolk wastewater treatment plant.
Are these agreements in writing?
The agreements were in writing, but once we implemented the wastewater district, this is council's opinion of it, and I think this was, I can't speak to it because I wasn't
Sure.
the
No,
town
that's
administrator,
fine.
but I think the intent was to try and have some more levers in terms of liens and different things on properties. But by doing that, when we implemented a wastewater district, we essentially established like water, right? You pay for your water based on your usage. And so right now, there's a limited amount of users there. There's primarily, the Walgreens group here and the condos up there, but there were developments as well, Stop and Shop, everyone thinks Stop and Shop. They had a reserve on sewer flow, and they did make payments sporadically, but they weren't ever using the flow. So now, we're not recouping any funds on that. It's kind of complicated, but I think you can see where I'm walking through on it a bit.
We zoned Stop and Shop out of being able to build a Stop and Shop, so why are we collecting money from them?
Well, we're not collecting money
Well,
from them.
why would we
This is
trying to restore our ability to collect money from someone who's not going to be able to build us?
This is the part where it will make a little bit more sense here.
Sorry, I'm
No,
sorry. but-
no, this is good. I anticipate, this is why I wanted to dive in this a little bit.
Okay.
And like I said, we'll bring town council in for our meeting and our DPW director. The way that it worked previously, think of it, I'm just going to use a hypothetical number. You had 100 users,
Yep.
100 users sharing 100% of the costs, right? Even though only 40 of the users were actually using the service. So those 40 users still had their costs shared amongst the other 60 people who weren't utilizing the service. Now, with this wastewater district, you have 40 users, and they've got 100% of the cost. So the bill exponentially goes up higher for those 40 users. Now, it's a longer policy discussion, and I know that's where we go. But, you know, one of the things that the select board had when we were setting the sewer rates, that community was like, this is expensive for us. This is exponentially expensive. You know, the sewer bills would be, pretty significant. So we're looking at a variety of ways to try to mitigate that. The board did vote at the sewer rate hearing to subsidize the sewer rate for this year, because we realized, or the board realized, that this was an exponential cost. So they provided a 40% cost share, so 60% of it would be subsidized. We could cover that 60% with the retained earnings in the fund. But moving forward, that obviously isn't something that is sustainable for the town, and, residents.
Joyce?
Hi.
Hello.
I could be wrong. The agreements that we had, those were initiated and signed or agreed to a number of years ago.
Yes.
Do we still have viable contacts? I don't believe that many of the agreements can even be adhered to, because I don't believe any of the folks are still around or in business or have an interest.
I'm going to try to keep it simple, because I don't want to get too in the weeds, because it's more select board, I think, policy.
Okay, but I am thinking the right thing.
You are.
Okay.
For the town's purposes, the agreements are null and void. I think that's the simple way we could say that.
I know one of the ways to solve it. Sorry. Get some building going on down there.
That's another part of the
Charge new
conversation.
users.
Yes, we're looking at a variety of
The
things.
B1 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, we're looking at a variety of things. This particular article is one lever, but there's a lot more other levers that I've spoken with the select board about, and I think we're going to have more information about that moving forward.
Okay.
Let me know when that meeting is.
I'm sure you all will be-
I know I can look at the agenda just as easily
No,
as you
absolutely. We
can.
can share it with Erica.
Yes, Jonathan.
If you happen to know off the top of your head, can you attach what is a dollar figure to what the select board voted from a subsidy perspective?
I have that figure for you. So 40% recovery was essentially $81,500. The budget for 24 was about $203,000. So it has about $122,000 difference. The retained earnings was certified in October at $162,000. So as I mentioned, we can cover this first year of it with retained earnings, so there won't be any impact to the town. There won't be any reallocation of free cash or anything like that. It's within this fund. But as I say, I think that the board knows this is an issue moving forward, and I wanted to apprise you this is an issue moving forward by
Yeah.
thing.
And a related question,
Sure.
the retained earnings,
Yep.
could this issue aside, or the subsidy aside, if we didn't have the need for that subsidy, could that be transferred or used in other areas of the town budget, or is it restricted to only for wastewater?
Restricted only to wastewater.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ready to go on?
Everyone good?
So the next article beyond that is the revenue shortfall that I mentioned. We have to go through the semantics of appropriating retained earnings to cover that shortfall.
Okay.
Chapter 90 authorization, this is sort of our annual article, and allowing for that spending.
What do the governor's numbers look like, do you know?
We have
No, you don't get numbers. For
yeah, you
this.
don't, not for Chapter 90. You'll
Chapter 90
spend-
comes later.
Okay, thank you.
Although the letters should be coming out soon.
The letter's going to come out soon, and I think when Blair comes, we can give, by the time Blair comes, we'll probably have that information.
Okay.
And you
Thank
probably
you.
can ask him where you were for this year as well. The next article is a request from King Philip to establish a capital stabilization fund. They're not appropriating funds or anything to it. They're just being forward-thinking. They have a couple of projects in the future that they want to, prudently put some money away when possible, and without having to come to the town and ask us to fund them with free cash or anything like that. And some of them are, and I'm sure Rich can dive into it further, upgrading the high school stadium, turf field, and track, tennis courts, things of that nature.
So they keep their surplus funds.
Yes.
So this is just, we're going to keep our surplus funds, but we're going to segregate some of this over here to capital funds, so you guys don't ask us to cover our operating budget through our own surplus funds.
It's a little
It's a
bit.
savings
look,
account, Rob.
Yeah, they're going to probably,
They already have a savings account.
their intent will actually be, from what Rich has said, and I want you to hear this directly from Rich,
This is
to
the new
appropriate-
superintendent, by the way, for
Yes,
people
Rich
who
Riley,
aren't
he's
up to
fantastic.
speed.
Is to utilize some of their excess and deficiency that they do keep themselves, allocate some of those funds sometimes to the stabilization fund, and then,
Okay. But I mean, E&D is also used for.
correct.
We can chat with him because he'll be coming.
I get, you went on about the town center sewer for 10
Because
minutes.
it's
I have
his
two
job.
questions.
I'm not disagreeing
can
with
go.
you, Rob.
Okay?
Can I ask one more
Go ahead,
question?
Jonathan.
Glad I'm between you two.
An adjacent question to this, did we finish paying off the allocation for the turf field from the original build? I don't recall when that went through, but I didn't think that was fully paid yet.
15? 14 or 15? So it's 10
Oh,
years.
there was one, there was a turf field one, and I think it has fallen off.
Yeah, I think
It's about 10 years, so if
I believe it does. And actually, in your budget, on the electronic version that you have, because I only gave you the budget summary and the revenue, we actually included all the debt for your information in there. So when you open that electronic slide, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth slide, you can see all the way out for all the debt. that
PowerPoint?
we've- so it's Excel.
it's an
It's an
Excel
Excel
one, okay.
Yeah.
from last meeting.
So you'll be able to see all the debt as well.
Okay, my technology's not working.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was 2015 or 2016, wasn't
It was, I'm just trying to, it was between the time my daughter graduated and my son
Yeah,
graduated.
exactly.
So that's why I'm,
Right. So
it's
between-
sometime between 14 and 17, and I think it was 15, so.
Well, 15 was, the disaster graduation, so it was.
But it was the first year on the field, right?
Maybe you're right.
In which case,
You couldn't anchor the tent, so it blew away, right?
so if it's fallen off, it's just fallen off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be in the 10th year, yeah.
It's not listed as one of the.
Well, I guess the
excluded
optics of that are, it's better to ask for a field
I don't
upgrade
see it.
after it fell off than while it's still on.
You must be thinking forward a few years, everything.
They are, and that's what they imply. They say, hey, we're thinking about the future, like 2, 3 years down the line, but we just want to do it the right way, so that's why they propose it.
Oh, it wasn't the best one to begin with. It's new.
I didn't get to walk on it, so I don't know.
You guys ready for me to continue?
I think so,
Thank
yeah.
you.
All right. The next, do not ask me. I'm going to let Rich speak directly to these.
Okay, we won't ask you on
But
these.
MBTA community zoning bylaw, I think you guys were surprised that we were intending to come in May for that. There's going to be an inclusionary amendment to the inclusionary bylaw, particularly to get in line with MBTA communities, but also there's some other reasons that we're looking at the inclusionary bylaw. I want Rich to speak to that end to you all. They're changing some schedule of uses, regulations amendments.
This is the, I think you mentioned it last time you were here, but maybe not. This is the massive project they undertook. They did find some small mistakes.
Yeah.
So Brian will carry this for us on the floor of town meeting.
Worked so well last time.
Another sort of standard article, but is a street acceptance for Ariana Lane. And then we've got
The
three,
only road that's up?
the only road that's up.
Huh.
The,
3 or 4.
then we have 3 DPW articles, and we'll have Blair speak to them. One of them is the temporary repairs on private ways. The town is for a long period grappled with unaccepted roads within town. We've, we'll be honest, the town has done work on those roads. We've removed snow, we've made temporary repairs. We try to limit them because they are unaccepted streets. But, we have to make sure roads are safe for public safety vehicles, emergency vehicles, et cetera. The town has never accepted any sort of mass general law regarding this, so we want to correct it. You guys know I've kind of tried to correct a few things here. So that's what that largely is geared around. We're working with town council to get the finalized language, but Blair will be here soon to speak to that.
And that's, you said that we'd simply adopt some state statute that clarifies our ability to work on those roads? Or
Yes.
There's liability involved, I'm assuming?
Yes, and that's why you want to add some other language too, to protect the town a little bit there too. One thing that I didn't mention to the board yet, but that next Tuesday, our next select board meeting, there might be something in addition to that. There actually has to be a a ballot vote to remove snow from private ways. So that's something that we probably should put on the ballot for this year. That was a little interesting one that town council advised
So that
us
would
on.
be in the November election probably, or?
If the select board determines it's okay, we can get it on for this May.
Oh, the May one.
You have to do 35 days before the election. I spoke to them about another issue last night, but not this one, so.
It's not gonna pass.
So that's something to talk about, something to consider.
Does the town want responsibility of these? And if so, what's the barrier
We
for
already
it?
do, don't we?
I think,
For doing.
Justin said that
I know we're
public
doing
safety
it.
reasons, they need to be able to access the roads, but
There's been a challenge, and I want Blair to speak to it, but, I've been a part of this as well. The town has typically done work on these roads for some time. The challenge is when residents who are on those roads, some we've encountered this past year where they didn't even know they were on an unaccepted road.
Right.
So like, why am I not getting the same service as, other, we all say taxpaying residents. And then sometimes they want even more demands or even more service, and then we grapple with that saying, we really can't be doing that when we shouldn't be doing it in the first place, right? So it's trying to find a balance, and what we've talked about with the board is, I think if we have something in place, people can understand what the expectation is on both sides. We won't go any further, and we won't do any less.
So if the town wants to provide parallel services as to accepted roads, why are we not? What do we have to do to accept the roads?
You want to speak with Blair and Rich to explain that.
They're
We had
all
a
gonna be
conversation.
different reasons.
There's a lot of roads here that will never be accepted. The grade is too high, et cetera. There's quite a few roads that aren't
not built.
ever going to be
they're
accepted.
They're not built anywhere near
Yeah.
current code. And maybe when they were built, they were in code, and maybe not, but,
Some aren't built, there's paper roads as well.
Right.
so can we make sure there's an inventory with that when he comes?
Excuse me?
He's got an inventory of these, right?
We have that, yes.
And sort of an understanding of why each of them is unaccepted. Some of them are just developers that went out of business, and some of them are,
Yep, we've talked
Old,
about it with the
yeah.
board. We'll be prepared to answer those questions.
And if a developer went out of business,
might not have enough
can
performance
we
bond.
take? But we can take it, right? And then we're responsible for building the road.
If there was one. Yeah. I think that's a practice that's only been around for a few years, 15 years or so.
Taking?
No, performance bond.
Oh, performance bond. I wasn't talking about that.
People living on a street, it makes no sense to keep, a paved way just because the developer went out and didn't do ticks and tacks, not take the road.
You also, this is the other thing that you count. Not everyone who's on an accepted road wants an accepted road either. We've found,
Lake Street.
right? We've had people like, we don't want you to do that. That's the challenge that we had. If we provide service in one manner, and they're like, no, we want special service because we're not an accepted road, and we don't want you to do this. We faced that. This past year has been
Believe it or
a
not,
lot of
property tax and assessment.
a lot of issues with unaccepted roads. So there's a variety of reasons why they're unaccepted.
Anyone else? No? Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, it's going to be a good
I
conversation.
feel like I might be on that list. I'm kind of nervous now.
You're on a new road, right? So you might be able to, you should be okay, but
And then the next two are bylaw amendments that are required as part of the permit from the water management permit from DEP. I think I got the finalized version fairly recently, so I don't really have too much information on that, but I do know they're required. Town council's taking a look at it, so you'll have Blair speak to it when he appears before you. And the final one is an interesting one. As we go through the budget presentation or discussion, some of our departments are going to recommend some fee changes. We've looked at comparable communities. It's been a while that we've taken a look at fees in some departments. One of them is town clerk. But town clerk's fees were inserted into the bylaw. So to make any change for town clerk fees, you have to change the bylaw. So it's something that Carol and I have talked about. We don't know if we're going to pursue it. It depends on how the warrant looks this year. This for spring town meeting. It's whether it's spring town meeting or fall town meeting. It's something that probably makes a prudent change. Those fees shouldn't be in the bylaw, and they were recently placed by a former town clerk for some reason, so it just makes sense to remove it.
so all the other fees, there's some statute that governs how you set them.
Yeah, or
You have to have a public hearing, you have to do that, you have to post it.
and the
blah,
select
blah, blah.
board,
And these are in the statute.
yeah, and these are in the bylaw, particularly
All her fees?
all town clerk fees.
Okay. All right.
That's the warrant.
I'd love to go back to
Sure.
12. So I think at fall town meeting, we talked about the establishment of a building expansion committee. Is that committee up and running and have names been applied?
Yes, it is up and running. As I mentioned, or may have not, the committee picked a demographer, and so they're working on a demographic study.
Yeah.
So it's working through that.
Is it possible that 12 will be part of the town committee reports and not a separate article?
It very well could be. I think Ingrid had mentioned that, and I'm not going to speak for Ingrid. Let Ingrid speak for herself. But there definitely will be a committee report if there is an article.
So, all right, anyone else have any questions on what was presented to us? When will language be available, for the most part?
I am going to try and have it ready for our next select board meeting, so it'll be
Okay.
ready for you guys the 20th.
2 weeks, okay.
I
All right.
might be able to get it soon, but I'm not going to promise that.
Okay. So, we have theoretical meetings over the next 5 weeks. I think we talked, I can't find my notes from last meeting, and I had the budget, I don't know if it's in the minutes, but,
It's in the minutes, right?
6, 13, and 20 was what we scheduled.
we've only scheduled 3 out? Okay, we should probably think about scheduling 27, April, whatever that would be.
Third.
3rd, looking for the calendar.
Yeah, we had talked about, a lot of it was TBD because we did.
And your drop dead date for getting the articles in front of you was,
The weekend of the 20th, 21st.
Right.
because I have to get to the printer by the 24th.
so we can and should probably meet Wednesdays through, why am I not looking at? Wednesdays through the 17th. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings. Is there a chance we can hear from some of the town departments next week? We're not sure about CPC. I thought maybe CPC could go next week, but we haven't been able to reach Cindy, and so we can't confirm it for sure.
So Cindy's had some things, she's been out of the loop. I spoke with her this week.
All right.
If you can get Cindy for the 13th, the 20th is probably the best time for departments, because
I was hoping to schedule the schools for the 20th, because they both said they could make it on the 20th.
okay.
Or we could also do something that novel and unique and do the schools at 2 separate hearings.
We had talked about the 20th being the departmental budgets at the last meeting.
We
so,
did.
yeah.
That's why
I hadn't heard from the schools. We can also do the 27th for the schools.
I'm away the 27th, not that it matters for anyone, but
Okay. It matters to me.
for department ones, though, I've got some
Yeah.
insight on stuff, so
Right.
it'd be good,
The 20th?
The reason why I think the 20th might make sense, I've had a chance to speak with Blair and Sarah, and those are some of the departments. Sarah's in the library and Blair's the DPW. They had mentioned they would be available for the 20th. I also think you want to speak to police and fire. I didn't get a chance to speak with them. Chief Kinney's out, but I anticipate they would make themselves available then too.
Okay.
So you would pretty much have all your departments that you need.
All right, and we can do the planning board on the 3rd. And then, Justin, you should plan on coming back on the 10th.
Of April?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just on this,
Unavailable that day.
the 10th you're out, okay. That would be kind of our last minute
Okay.
as we wrestle with various warrant articles.
We'll be here.
So if you can have your department's head show up next, the 20th, that would be great. I'm sorry, you weren't looking, if Justin, if you could have the department heads, the ones we've mentioned
Okay.
for the 20th. Is that what you said, right? That's what you said, yeah?
Yeah, I spoke with Sarah and Blair. Do you want me to, I don't know, does typically Erica reach out to them, or what do you,
Well, you can, but
I'll see, what I'll
make
do
sure
is.
that you're there to tell them they have to be there.
All right,
You're their boss.
I will handle that. So I want to
No,
make sure.
you should
So
extend
we'll
the
have Sarah,
invitation.
Blair,
And then Justin will say, you got, and CC him. And then they'll know that they have to be here, so,
yeah, so Sarah, Blair, Chief Hines, and Chief Kinney.
great.
I think those are definitely.
And I will ask the schools to come on the 27th. We have in the past, and I'm going to ask them to try to edit their presentations down a little bit. Sometimes the presentations itself take 45 minutes, which is sort of overkill. But we've also had folks come after those folks on those meetings. Do you think, so Blair's probably had the biggest amount of time of the folks. Who's the other department head besides the police and fire? Blair and
Sarah, library.
Library. We could probably have Cindy show up that one too if she can't make next week. So she offer her the 13th and say she's going to have a clear board, but tell her that if she's on the 20th, she's going last. That might motivate her.
One other thing to keep in mind, maybe too, just to help with this. I know the planning board's meeting the 12th, which is Tuesday next week. So I don't know if
He said he could do the 20th,
Okay. So you
but
could,
he can't. I'm going to do the schools. I'm going to tell him to come on the 3rd of April.
yeah, because actually in his email I see he has ZBA the 20th. So I don't know, the 13th or the 3rd of April seems
Yeah,
like it would
I
work.
think the 3rd of April is where it fits. He sent me his schedule as well.
Okay,
so.
good.
So what, we've got the 20th, we have the department heads. 13th, we have CPC unless they want to come on the 20th.
Yes, assuming we have a space.
We'll have a space. Karen's working on it. 27th will be the schools, the 3rd will be planning. The 10th will be our kind of wrap up on the budget. If we have questions for Justin, we'll put them to him before then, he can come back. We can vote on stuff as on some of the stuff we can vote on it as it's presented. But the budget discussion and vote will be the 10th or the 17th.
I won't be here April 3rd.
Did you, Was the 3rd the one you couldn't be? No, you couldn't be here on the 10th, Joyce? Was that?
I can't be here on the 10th.
Okay, all right.
And you're not
Do you
here on
want to
the
be here
3rd.
for the planning stuff?
I don't know how interesting it is.
Read it, let me know.
Well, when I get,
Okay.
Oh, we do actually have the planning board one.
We do have, we got the initial language, and I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to change much, so.
Yeah.
There was a story today in the, that Rentham Norfolk newspaper. Had a story about the articles, if you want to peruse.
I mean, the MBTA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The MBTA one.
Okay.
I hadn't had a chance to open that yet.
Does that sound like a reasonable schedule to everyone? Gives us enough time at the back end if we have problems or need to see somebody again?
David and Erica, what I'll try to do the 20th as well, I'll reach out to Tom, who's our town council. That way
That
we
would be
can
great.
try to tackle the other articles then at that same time too, because you'll have Blair already there as well.
Yep, all right.
So I'll try to get Tom there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if he can't come, we probably will want him at a later date.
I'll make sure he's
All
available.
right, cool. Is there any more questions on our schedule and making sure, or is everyone comfortable with who we're seeing? We may hear something that makes us want to see somebody else, but as of right now.
So the 13th, next week.
13th is,
CPC
13th
or
is
nothing,
CPC
right?
or nothing.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so that, all right.
And the nothing may be that we don't have a room, or it may be that
Yeah.
city can't come, but I think we'll have a room. So we have to do hybrid, right? I'm sorry to ask this question, but I just want to confirm it.
You
Like we-
have to? What do you mean?
Meaning we couldn't hold, are there meeting rooms in here that are available but not hooked up for,
No, the next door 120, you
that
can.
was a camera the last time we used it. Somebody came in with a camera and set it up.
No, it's working out, but it's.
We've
closed
outfitted now.
Oh, okay.
Next week, so.
All right.
Yeah, it's just these two rooms and then NCTV.
I'm asking a question which I think I know the answer to, but we're required to do hybrid meetings, right?
You'd be in person.
Or,
Be
no,
in
to be in
person
person and allow for remote participation.
Actually,
I don't want to be stinky about it, I'm just asking the question.
no. I don't know off the top of my head. I want to double check. Because are you asking, it says, can you have a remote meeting?
No,
No.
so we can have an in-person
Doesn't have to be
meeting, but not
recorded.
have it be remote.
On a Zoom.
Like use a room, not
We
because
have
we
to have it,
don't want to be on.
can we meet
Oh.
without it being on Zoom?
Oh, no, yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought
But
that
we
was
still have to
extended
record
through
it.
2024.
What?
I thought
Yes,
that was
the hybrid-
extended.
It was
by
extended to
2024.
allow for it, it wasn't a
Allowance was.
Oh,
requirement.
to allow, okay.
That's why I
I
was
think the
trying to
mandate went
understand
away
the
with
question.
the regular COVID stuff, but
I
it's
don't,
an
I'm not
option.
proposing that.
Okay.
I'm simply, I mean, because at some point, you're going to have 5 committees that want to meet, and,
Yeah.
and it's going to, you're going to run it, I mean, we used to meet all over the place, and now we don't.
Fire station. Do meetings.
Because you've only got 3 rooms that can do,
Yep.
Just for your
I do remember
committee's
that.
knowledge, because we did send this to committees, I believe, as well. We actually inserted specific language. There isn't a requirement that it's
Oh,
on Zoom.
Yes, I do have that in the.
Yeah, so in answering your question, there isn't a requirement that you have to have a Zoom meeting. Obviously.
but we have to,
prefer-
do we ultimately have to record it so it can go on NCTV though, right?
That's, the-
But they can come.
They can set up a camera and point it at the table, right, okay. All right, cool, like they used to do. All right. We could meet in Carol's office. I used to like meeting down there. We used to meet, that used to be a meeting room. It was a lot of fun, because it was very crowded. All right, we can either discuss committee assignments or committee liaison, which I think we probably should have had that set up, and that's my fault. Or we can do the minutes. We can do one or the other, but we're going to do the other one afterwards, so. Want to end with the minutes?
That would be the tradition.
Okay. So,
second, quick question, sorry. to
sure,
interrupt.
sure, no
Do you
problem.
want the budget presentation?
Oh! Sure,
He's got great news.
right?
It's balanced.
It's balanced.
You found a pile of money underneath the rock out back, or?
Only $1 million.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
worries.
Forgot you had a PowerPoint.
What I will do is I'll try to go through fairly quick. I did give, but this presentation was formatted for the select board. I saw you guys before I saw the select board, in a sense, so some of these things we've kind of touched base on it, but if there's any questions or anything, feel free to interrupt me however David wants to run it. But I'll try and focus on a couple of things.
You could just raise your hand and then go ahead. That's fine with me.
So the two different pieces of paper that you have are the only adjustments of that packet that I originally gave you. The first one reflects revenue changes. I think when I first came before you, the fiscal year 25 budget number for local receipts remained the same as fiscal year 24. So now it reflects changes for fiscal year 25. They're essentially 211,000. I'll just keep going unless
Yeah.
you guys tell me to wait.
It's on here, but it's not on there.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you pull it to the other screen, Erica,
Disappeared. But I had a perfect view before, now I don't.
no, it's not on there.
Well, it should, if you go back to the Zoom here, it should be on.
I'm fine. I can sit like this, because everyone else, you might have to turn around, Melissa.
I'll dive into the PowerPoint after this, but
Okay, what does everyone, which, I don't know why it's doing that, but does anyone have a preference for which TV it's on?
If you've got it in front of you,
I've got my own version. I'm fine.
why don't we just put it here, because everyone can see this.
Okay. Yeah, and so on that first sheet, you have revenue changes that reflect local receipt changes, as well as the proposal that I had mentioned about ARPA and free cash. So those revenue changes will lead to a balanced budget, essentially. And then the summary sheet that you have reflects the departmental changes. That first summary sheet you had were the departmental submissions as they were. They also had schools at a 4% increase. You're going to see on this budget summary, Norfolk Public Schools, excuse me. You'll see on this budget summary sheet, it looks as 3.2%, and I'll tell you why as I go in the PowerPoint. But that's pretty much the changes there, so I'm just going to dive into the PowerPoint. I'm going to skip over slides 2 and 3. We touched base on these before. They were revenue.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we want to go over there too much. On slide 4, it reflects the revenue adjustments that we make in terms of local receipts. You'll note that it's $211,000 in changes in local receipts. I wanted to highlight that, and that's a 5.3, about 5.4% increase over fiscal year 24. I highlight that here in this slide and the next slide because, local receipts and revenue, being conservative there, it assists the town because that's how we free cash is how we fund capital. So the more aggressive we get in revenue there, particularly in local receipts, it has a cascading effect and reduced free cash, and then less, funds that you have available for capital as well. So just wanted to highlight those changes there. We felt it was prudent, but it's a challenge that Todd and I grapple with, how far to go with the local receipts.
Rob?
Justin, it would be great at some point to see actuals, because we're going to use 605 in free cash, and how much of that was local receipts that were underestimated, and how much was turnbacks from, so we have the FY24 number on this, which I assume is budget, right? Or is that actual? It's budget. So it'd be great to see actual, because it gives us a sense of, is the appropriation.
What I'll do is I'll have Todd provide, excuse me, we had that information, obviously, because that's how we determine. We'll provide it to you all, just so you have that information.
It's not, you're only going to have a half of this year, though.
We used the preceding 3 years
Okay.
when we guide, so we used the
Well, that'd be good.
22, 21, 20. We can provide that to you.
Great,
I have
thank
it.
you.
Yeah, no problem. So slide 5, sort of skip over quite a few things here. New growth is solid, building permits are strong. State aid is the 2.78%. We always use the governor's proposed budget for state aid figures, and that's what we have in there. I will highlight prison mitigation funds this year. The preceding year, for no rhyme or reason, we never got explanation, we got $100,000 less in prison mitigation funds. So we had to, in that last year's revenue, we brought it down $100,000. This year, for no rhyme or reason, we got another $100,000. So we're putting the $100,000 back in there.
You got the money back to where it was 2 years ago, essentially, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Right around there. So
Is Walpole still getting a lot more than us?
Walpole's always gotten more than us, so nothing's changing.
Just checking.
They shouldn't, it's closed.
Don't-
Somehow.
I'll talk to you offline about this.
It's an intake center still, isn't it? They don't do intake?
I don't think so.
And I mentioned, why we always highlight, local receipts and the ripple effect that it has, so I'll just keep going through there. The next slide 6, just gives you our proposed budget and how it looks for the various government structures. You'll see public safety is about 5%. You'll speak with Chief Hines. That's largely driven by police when you dive into the budget summary sheets, because a lot of our officers have gotten more education, and so it's aligned with the Quinn bill. But also another big driver of public safety is the MEC assessment. This I mentioned last year was the last year we were getting 25% grant. So this year it's the full allotment of the MEC assessment. So MEC is going up about $99,000. In the future, you won't see these large increases anymore because there's no more grant funds associated with that. But those are the big drivers in public safety, and you'll be able to dive into the budget summary sheet to see that. Education, you've got 3.41%. Benefits, health insurance and different things, 5.59%. Debt service within the operating budget's going down a little bit. And then exec debt, you're seeing is jumping up quite significantly, largely driven by the fire station. So the overall budget's about 5.44% when you account for exempt debt, and 3.5% if you don't account for that. On the next slide are just big picture view of what are the budget drivers. I mentioned them already, so I
Slide
won't.
7, next to you.
Yeah, so I won't get into that too much. The only thing that I will mention again is I had mentioned that the medical insurance, we had a range when I first met with you guys. It hadn't been established. We did get our figure, and it's 9.995%. So that's the figure that we put in the budget.
So if we wanted to ask a bunch of questions about that, who's the best person to come before us?
Health insurance?
Yeah.
What are the questions?
I don't know, but it's a big increase. And I know Ken was talking about it last time, so.
I could tell you a reason why it's a big increase. I mean, it could be myself, it could be Todd, it could be our assistant town
Why
administrator.
don't we put that on your agenda for one of the meetings when you come back?
Sure. I mean, the only, well, let me take a crack at it first, real quick.
And I know it, I'm a public employee, my insurance hasn't gone up by anywhere near that amount in the last few years, and it's gone up a couple times, big time over the last 3 or 4 years, so.
Yeah, let me answer it. Let me take a crack at it, because
All right.
I think I'm probably going to give you the most information
Okay.
of anyone here. So, the town had a pretty steady or low health insurance increases pre-COVID and then in COVID.
Right.
The reason COVID, I think everyone knows, most people weren't utilizing health insurance or anything like that. What we've seen with a lot of municipalities was after COVID, a lot of people then started going to get procedures and services and different things like that. Our health insurance rate is largely driven by our claims. We're a part of Maya, and is largely driven by claims.
Okay.
And for the town, the past couple of years, the claims have been pretty large. They're over 120% loss claim. It's pretty significant. We also look at our employee demographics. A lot of our employees, we have teachers we pay for medical insurance on town side. They've been in the school system for a while. We have a older group of employees in town. So those demographics have led to, quite a bit of usage of health insurance. So with Maya, you get a range, and based on your claims of the past 2 years, of average 2 years, you fall in line on that range, and our claims have been pretty high, so we get the highest rate increase. The good thing with Maya, too, some people will say good things and bad things about Maya, is that because you're in Maya and you have member communities that are part of it, if Norfolk covered their insurance wholly by itself and wasn't a part of this group, you would have to pay for all your claims out. You pay for them out. Maya will say, hey, let's say, the threshold's 500,000, but Norfolk's claims is $1 million. $500,000 falls up. They cover it as part of a collective. They won't hit you with it, but you're at the highest rate possible. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
So, simple answer, our claims have been high.
So
We're at the
our
highest rate.
claims are pooled with everyone else in Maya,
Correct.
essentially. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have we, so I was on the IAC when I was an employee in the town of Foxborough for a long time, and I've been round and round on this wagon wheel with Maya, battled with them, et cetera. Have we, so the only thing is, obviously, I'm a public employee, have Blue Cross insurance, same thing Maya offers. Obviously, my plan design might be a little different than yours, might be different than yours, but just based on the community's choice. But the issue with Maya, or the challenge with Maya, is the lack of any competition. They've signed an exclusive arrangement with Blue Cross, which has wiped everyone else off their sheet. So there's really, it's just, you wait every year to say, what's my increase going to be? There's no competition. And so I'm just curious, from the town point of view, is there ever a thought of looking at a different insurance broker outside of Cabot Risk and saying, hey, here's our census, can you quote us? Can you show us what Anthem would charge, a UHC or one of the competitors? And I didn't know the answer as well. It causes a disruption. The HR person has to go key all this stuff in if we made a change. But has there been any thought, or one of the other trusts like West Suburban or one of those?
That's a great question. I think the board has given us license, and they, to look at all options. And so we did. We did actually explore taking a look at it. We went out a bit, and they advised us, and I think it's prudent, because of where our claims have been the past few years, they said if you go out now, it's not the right time to go out. It's better to stick with Maya. The fact that you're pooled is actually realizing some savings for you, because obviously when you go out for bid and you look at that, they're looking at all your claims. So it's something that we've looked at, we've explored. We are open to everything, and we obviously want to give the options to employees as well. So we've convened the IAC to talk about things like that. We've talked about plan design changes too. So we're looking at all options. It just wasn't the right year for us to go out.
No, that's good to hear. I'm glad, because as long as, you obviously and the select board's aware that with Maya, you lose the competition. But if you know that, you know what you're doing, hey, maybe 2 or 3 years from now, let's take a look. I was somewhere where they didn't want to look outside, and the price was paid because there was no competition, and we had a low claims. We had a claims experience was good for a few years, but our rates still were driven up, and that comes into the big pool. Through the, somebody in another community, there's somebody with a catastrophic health thing driving things up, and now we're paying. I remember hearing about a fire at a boathouse in a large city once, and I said, why are you telling me about this at a stop-loss meeting? I don't care that their building burned down, but it's driving our P&C rates up. So it's kind of, it's a thing. But as long as somebody on the town side is good with that and is realizing that that's the back end of Maya is the lack of competition, what can you do?
Okay, slide 8 is sort of a summary chart, and I'm being transparent. This is a summary chart that sort of summarizes what some of the changes are from the original budget summary sheets that you saw. Some of these are expansion requests, some of these are, budgeted fiscal year 24 figures that are going down. So we try to put a condensed chart in there for you. I think you can cross-summarize it with what you had initially. I won't dive too much in it, but, there were significant reductions, over $513,000 from what was in that original budget summary sheet.
Just to be clear, okay, never mind. I thought one of the red numbers didn't have a bracket on it. Never mind.
Yeah.
There's a light on my screen, so I can't see it. But so this is different than from 2 weeks ago, is what
Yes.
you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For example, education in the black, you'll see that, ag
Yep.
and tri-county, those numbers were higher than what we had in the budget summary
Okay.
sheet at that
Great.
point.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joyce.
Are we, Justin, are we going to be able to have a copy of this for our discussions with the department heads when they come in?
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
sent us
I sent
PowerPoint.
I sent.
Oh, we were sent this?
Yeah.
I wasn't able to print anything out today, so.
Yeah, so
Okay,
You got it.
what
You
we
got it
sent to
this
advisory
afternoon, yeah.
was the PowerPoint and the updated budget summary sheets.
okay,
We have this.
all right, thank you.
Slide 9, just more informational because we met with the budget subcommittee for the Norfolk Public Schools. They met and voted to approve an increased budget of 4%, which reflected about a $603,000 increase. But they also requested that the full committee approve the use of $125,000 in special education stabilization funds. I had mentioned that at our previous meeting, so the budget subcommittee did approve that. When you account for that, that $125,000 has to be reflected on the school budget. That you will not see that on the town's revenue sheets or anything like that. So that's why I mentioned earlier, on the Norfolk Public Schools, it looks like a 3.2% increase because of that. And Norfolk Public Schools are going to have their public hearing regarding the budget on March 12th at 7 p.m., in case anyone is interested in that.
So those funds coming out of the special education, they don't necessarily need to be used, or they're not being used for anything special education, for special education purposes, or they are?
They are used for special
Okay,
education.
so they just need to, they just
replacing.
want that 125.
Yes,
They're replacing general fund money that they would have
yes.
gotten.
And
Got it.
Ingrid can speak to it. There's obviously increased special education costs. You'll hear that from KP as well. So we're using for that specific reason. For advisory committee's knowledge, and I'm sure you guys are aware, there was $250,000 in the special ed stabilization fund. So we're using about half of that, giving ourselves a buffer. And then also the school committee has to vote to approve the release of those funds, and the select board has to vote to approve the release of those funds.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. The next slide on 10, this has been asked of me in select board meetings and various things, so this is a new slide. What we just want to do is just highlight some of the public school expenses that are covered in the town budget, so they're not included in Norfolk Public Schools allocation. I'm not going to go into it. I think if you want to talk about it with Ingrid or anything like that, but I wanted to give that information so it's transparent for everyone.
Just a quick question, just for comparative purposes. Each of these line items that we're looking at here for Norfolk Schools, there is an equivalent line item that is covered in the KP budget, correct? So the KP budget line item will include each of these items.
Yes.
Whereas the Norfolk Schools line item excludes
Yes.
these ones, and those are covered in the general operating budget,
Yes.
correct?
And that's
Okay, got it.
part of the reason why we want to highlight that
Yep,
too.
thank you. Yep.
You're welcome.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
It's just for those two, the middle and the bottom section, though? Those are in the town budget? That top one, what, that assessment, that's not the,
Yeah, no, that's just our allotment towards the school budget. yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
thank you.
So some of the highlights of the fiscal year '25 budget. The budget recommendation that I submitted to the board includes rescinding an ARPA appropriation. We had a grant writer procurement specialist position. When we utilized ARPA funds last year, we still had left a little bit of amount for the future because we really thought this is an important position to have. There's a lot of money out there available for grants. But because of our budget climate, I'm recommending to the board that they rescind that ARPA appropriation and use that $195,000 to balance the budget. There's two positions that we're proposing to restore in this fiscal year 25 budget. And that's why I'm having Blair, you usually have Blair anyway, but that's why I'm having Sarah as well. So one's the DPW grounds position. Over this past year, there's been a lot of, obviously recreation fields, mowing and all the cemetery and different things within town. There's really, and this year is exacerbated because there was a lot of water and rain and so forth. But we reduced in fiscal year '24 budget the DPW grounds position and a highway position. So in this proposal, we're proposing to add at least a grounds position. It's not it's not expanding from previous budgets, but it is restoring it. I want Blair to speak to why we think that's prudent. The other position is the children's librarian position. For that position, we're proposing hiring it in January, so it'd still be frozen in technicality for a year and a half. And that's why I think you need to speak with Sarah, so you can understand that. I will say, when you look at the budget summary sheets for these departments, the way we're able to do it too, if you dive into their lines, the overall public works budget is increasing by 0.1%, even with that position included. So we found some other reductions. And, I think for us, you can buy all the equipment, you can do all the work, but the people in DPW get the work done. So for Blair, it was a priority, and I think for us, it was a priority to get at least one of those positions back to help with work. The request, the bandwidth, it's important to us. In the library as well, when you look at it, library, their growth is 1.2%. And I think if you remember when I spoke with the advisory committee, my budget memo, I asked town departments to come in with 3% growth. And that includes expenses and salaries. And generally, salaries increase by 4% because you have 1.5 and 2.5. So when you look through these summary sheets, you're going to see that a good amount of our departments were able to do it. We found some additional, or we made tough decisions because for us, the personnel was important. So I understand in a budget where we're asking to be crimped and tightened down, it looks different to expand those positions, but I do want to emphasize the restorations of positions. And yeah, there were a lot of requests that we received for restoration that obviously we couldn't do, and they were tough. But it's a tough budget.
Can you explain again what the first bullet is? The grant writer position?
Yeah.
Was that $195,000 position?
No, it was over many fiscal years.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
It's got to be the highest paid person in town.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike's looking for a new job.
It was ARPA. You could utilize up to, I think, until fiscal year 26 off the top of my head. So we had kept still appropriations for 24, half of 24, 25, and 26. So that's those fiscal years entirely.
So there is no grant writer position now?
No.
Is there one that's shared with KP or not? I mean, because they have one, I believe.
No,
Similar position.
we talked about this last evening too. The board, one of the members here had mentioned, are we looking at, partnering with our member communities or anyone else? And I said I've reached out with some of our communities, reached out to our public schools as well. We want to try and see if there's ways to leverage some different things with some of our regional partners to try to help.
I know I mentioned MAPC 2 weeks ago at our last meeting. I thought that they provided that service at one point. Maybe they don't. Or maybe it's got to be a grant that they're
It's a grant.
directly involved in or something.
It's a grant that helps fund a piece of it, yeah. And so I said this last night too, is obviously we're looking at, as many partners as possible. I think a bit of it is, the select board office, Kate and myself, we're gonna, we've tried to be aggressive with grants. We're trying to get as much money as possible for the town, and we're gonna continue to do that. Where was I going with it? Sorry.
Trying to fill a gap.
Yeah, filling gaps as much as possible. It's an important role for us. Oh, I remember. We have utilized a lot of community compact grants from the state, and we've leveraged that. I think one of the next things is, after we cycle through these next grants, I think we're going to probably try to leverage something in terms of grant writing or something like that. That would be my big one, because I really think there's a good opportunity for the town to leverage that for some more funds. And we need that. The last bullet at the bottom of the slide, and I think I'm putting this in because you saw that we have an overall town budget increase of 3.5%. But I think if you take out some of these key levers, if you exclude education, if you exclude out fixed costs, debt service because it's reducing, the MEC assessment because you won't ever see that increase to that level again in the future, and elections because elections is obviously fluid, The overall town budget growth, as I told you all, we're gonna be about 2% or lower, is 1.72%. That is not gonna be feasible, or is it sustainable in the future? And if you consider what we're using in free cash, which is almost $1 million, you know, I have to highlight that for us. We are going to, have to make some tough decisions, tough choices, and, and moving the future, understanding that there are a lot of projects coming to the town too. We have Tri-County, we have the fire station that's hitting, we potentially have school expansion. So there's a lot of different things that are emerging. So I want to be transparent, because that departments we were able to figure out this year, I don't know if I could do that again.
You said almost $1 million, but you meant 605,000.
I'm going to touch base on it on the next one. I'll explain why it's
Okay,
$1 million.
all right.
You just kind of amplifying your point, you can't do a 4%, personnel costs you 4% a year. If you're only raising your budget 1.72, you're eating something else, so.
It's
So elections will go down next year, right? Because they're only having one or two.
elections will go down next year.
Right. Metals basically go up by a growth percentage.
Yeah, right. You won't see that large of increase again for the MEC assessment. All the
Fixed costs is, define fixed costs if you don't.
the health insurance and benefits like that. And,
Okay.
And as I said,
Retirement?
those are kind of, retirement. And those are shared expenses. We share them with the schools too.
Okay.
Yep. So the next slide is kind of what I've already said is, this climate was difficult. There were a lot of requests that, departments made that we obviously couldn't include in this budget. And, overall 3.5% growth. I think when you hear from Ingrid, I think she's going to say, 4%, we're going to make do with what we have this year, but there's some challenges for them in the future as well. So I'll let her speak to that. But, maybe 3.5% growth isn't going to be feasible in the future. What does that mean? Those are the conversations we may have. And I said almost $1 million in free cash because it does. We have to acknowledge that we're using $125,000 in special ed stabilization funds. Those are non-recurring sources of funds too. So they are a one-time source of fund as well. So when you account for all those things,
It's not technically free cash.
exactly. But it is a one-time source, a non-recurring. So it's $925,199.
So I thought it had gone up $300,000, so that's why I was,
So.
okay.
And once again, ARPA will not be there for us anymore. We've tapped every dollar there.
Okay.
And
Not quite last call, but the music is starting to get quieter and the lights are going up.
that's a good summation.
2:45.
Yeah.
There's no one in this place but you and me, Ralph.
The last slide I won't touch base. This is something that we talked about with the select board, and I think these are conversations that you have advisory. There's still some decisions. We did the budget a little bit different this year. If you remember last year, I came with a unbalanced budget, and there was a lot of decisions we had to make, and I didn't feel comfortable just giving that to the board and saying, go this route. I wanted to have some collaboration there. I felt like I had license on what we were gonna do this year. So this year, I'm giving a balanced budget earlier, but I still want them to weigh in on if they think the recommendation is the direction they want. So I just highlighted that for them, and I highlighted that for you. And then the last slide is our historical budgets. I had Todd, he identified, Prop 2.5, override decisions in the fiscal years that they occurred and the result of them. But also I want him to note for these historical budgets, they also include exempt debt, for the board. This is not just operating budget increases either. But I wanted you guys to have that historical information as well. And that was my PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. Mike?
Can you remind me that the Tri-County thing that passed, how does that affect this at all, or?
So it
Is that- okay.
yes, it's a good question. That was another discussion we talked about last night a little bit. Tri-County is having a small impact in our operating budget this year because they went out for a short-term ban. They didn't go out for a long-term bonding or anything like that. So we're able to, cover that expense in the operating budget. That's part of the increase for Tri-County this year. Tri-County moving forward, this project is moving forward, it's said and done, right? We have to fund it, whatever the cost is. Tri-County was able to get about $18 million in additional MSBA funding, which is great. So when I initially presented this to the board and to advisory, the average cost per year was going to be about $520,000 to the town. And we had discussed, we can't fund that in the operating budget. And I think you see with this budget, clearly we can't do that. So the intent in sometime in the future is to do it a debt exclusion vote. The part with Tri-County, though, that is tricky, it's based on the assessment, but it's also based on enrollment based on a year. So it can ebb and flow. There's no set figure at all. So, you know, when we do that, we have language that we have from bond council and town council that would address that for us. I think that's something that we're going to try to talk about in the future. In a few weeks, we're going to have a presentation from Karen McGuire, who's the superintendent of Tri-County. So we'll get the update on those figures, and I'll also hear from my fellow colleagues on how some of the other communities are approaching it. Some are waiting a little bit later to pursue a debt exclusion vote, but a majority of the communities that have, you know, substantial assessment costs, they're going to do a debt exclusion as well.
When do
Great
you,
question.
when do you think you might be earmarking that for?
I can't say, Joyce. I think it won't be this May. I had this thing. It likely will probably try to align it with an election moving forward, so we don't have to pay for a separate one. It makes the most sense. That's more the board's call. It won't be May. And we want to do some public service and outreach
No,
to let
that's fine.
people be aware of it as well.
Thanks.
But it's not going to be an issue for 2025 because they're asking for such a small amount of money? Is that what you're
It
saying?
won't affect the 25 budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, so we can go back to the conversation I was having before I forgot what Justin was here for. We have traditionally had liaisons to various departments that require a lot of attention. People have taken that in different directions depending on what the department was and what they felt like they can and should do. At a minimum, it's important to identify you as yourself to the department head as the liaison for the Norfolk Advisory Committee, so they feel if they can't reach me or if they don't want to talk to me or whatever it might be, they can talk to that person. I think we've traditionally done the schools, we've done the police and fire departments, we've done planning board, and we've done DPW, and we've done things like library, but when they've had major stuff going on kind of thing, but we don't necessarily need that. If there's other departments people think we probably need to pay more attention, Board of Health, they don't really bring a lot before us. CPC, yeah, CPC is a good one. That's a good point. Thank you. So we had a discussion earlier before we started the meeting about the schools, and I think Mike had volunteered the last time, and Melissa volunteered to help him out this time. So we're covered on the schools. The planning board, anyone want to be the liaison for the planning board?
I'm going to miss their meetings.
I know you are. I'll do it for now, but I don't want to do it, but I'll do it for now unless someone else wants to do it. Okay.
I can do it.
You sure? Okay. Sure. All right. I have traditionally done the DPW. I don't have to do it unless someone wants to.
I'll do the DPW.
Okay, do the DPW, all right. Public safety?
I've been involved with
You've been
that.
in public safety. You guys want to split it?
Yeah.
All right. And CPC?
I can do that.
Jonathan can do CPC. Did I get everyone? Okay. Cool. I would ask that you reach out to your departments and just say, budget season started. I'm the liaison for the advisory board. If you've got any things you want to talk through, bring them to me or whatever. Ask them directly if they think there's a big issue that they need to bring to our attention. And see what they say. So, thank you. Minutes.
We have several minutes to approve, 3 in fact, that
Yep.
I had sent out earlier.
Yep.
You should start with the earliest, and I will continue speaking slowly to buy a little bit of time.
I have them written down.
Okay.
10/4, October 4th.
October 4th would be the first one, so I move that we approve the October 4th minutes as circulated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? You probably should abstain since you were in. November 14th.
I move that we approve the November 14th minutes as circulated earlier.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, thank you. And the last one was our last meeting, the 21st of February.
I similarly move to approve what was the date one more time?
February 21st.
The February 21st meetings as circulated earlier today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Donna,
I have a general comment.
about the minutes or something
No,
else?
not about-
Okay, can we finish the minutes? Okay, great, thank you.
We still have two outstanding sets of minutes from the October 11th and
No, October 17th and November
17th.
November 1st.
November 1st.
And what's the story there?
That was my mistake. I actually have November 1st, but I didn't want to send it out too close to the wire. And the 17th was the big school discussion.
Oh.
And that was my fault. It
Okay,
fell by the wayside, so I will have that.
Great.
I will have
Thank you.
everything caught up for next week.
thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, before we adjourn, we have a member of the audience who would like to ask a question, or?
Hi, Donna Jones, making comments as a general observation. The King Philip School Committee discussed their budget, and they had a public hearing. A meeting was recorded by Rentham Public Access, so that's available for viewing. The Planning Board is having their public hearing this coming Tuesday, March 12th at 7 p.m., and the Norfolk Public Schools is having their budget hearing next Tuesday at 7 p.m. So I've seen the pain of they come to these meetings and they present the same information again, just to let you know that it's available to be seen before we get here.
We've also told them that. I'm basically agreeing with you. It's that we've indicated to, especially the schools, that their information is available to us and that they don't have to start from the beginning on those presentations. But it's a balancing, it ebbs and it flows, but I appreciate the heads up, Donna, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you. See you guys all.